Today is May the 8th, and I, in numerology, have been told I'm an 8. And one of my missions in this life, I'm told, is to make money. I've never been very good at that so far. Maybe it's because I don't focus on money. Well, welcome everybody. Great to be here with you all, and thank you for joining us. I would like to just go around the group and introduce ourselves. My name is Alexis Constantinou, and I started Sacred Segments about 3 or 4 years ago. It was meant to be in person, but then COVID hit. When it was going to be in person, it was called Magic at the Palace, and I had a local palace coffee shop give me their room for free, and I advertised it, and it was going to be for 16 weeks, and then everything was closed, and I thought I'll take it online, and I'm so glad I did because I get to meet and speak with all of you. Would you like to introduce yourself, Elizabeth?
Sure. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see everyone. I see some new faces and some faces I'm familiar with. I live in Lawrence, Kansas, right in the center of the United States. I'm a stress management and historical trauma specialist and ancestral clearing practitioner. I would say, well, I'm a practicing yogi, of course, but I would say that the mission in my life is really to help end suffering by helping people wake up. Yeah. Thank you.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Paul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, I'm Paul. I'm from the southwest of England. Excuse me. Who am I? I don't know. I'm a witch, a healer, teacher. I'm sat in a beautiful witchcraft shop here in Plymouth in the UK. What's my mission? I don't know. Bringing people a taste of kind of ancient wisdom, and allowing them to use that in a modern context, I guess, is probably the easiest way. Nothing grander than that. Just yeah, working my magic.
Beautiful. Thank you, Paul. Nice to see you. Glad you're here. And you're going to be talking about the Rowan tree, I believe, a little later, right?
I am indeed. Oh, actually, I've got something to add to my little list of things I do. I am now the guest psychic. So we've got Drake's Island here. I don't know if any of you know about Drake's Island, but obviously it was owned once by Sir Francis Drake. I am now the guest psychic on their paranormal tours, which was quite cool.
Did you say Drake's Island? As in
Drake's Island, yeah. Yeah, it's a massive island. Well, I say actually it's quite big. In Plymouth Sound, and I recently got invited there to kind of do I suppose like an interview, I guess, in a way. And they were that impressed with what I picked up. And I knew, it's funny, I've lived here nearly my entire life, and I knew nothing about the history of the island, but my accuracy was 100%. So they actually invited me to now. So that's what I do. And I'm also joining a paranormal investigation group as their speaker of the dead person,
Wow.
which is it's really cool. A little bit of a local celebrity now as well. But yeah, that's me.
I look forward to hearing more from you and about the Rowan tree a little later.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Paul.
No worries.
Toby, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Hi. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Toby Johnson. I live in Austin, Texas, close to Oklahoma, but far away from everybody, isn't it? I'm a student of comparative religion. I was connected with Joseph Campbell, and later maybe I'll talk a little about my friendship with Joseph Campbell. My interest has been sort of understanding religion as an experience within consciousness, and understanding and honoring the kind of strange, mystical, and paranormal experiences that human beings have, and trying to understand how all this fits together. I'm a gay man, so I've been particularly interested in what this means for gay people, because I think we, in some ways, are both the sign and the opposite, the condemnation of breaking outside the cycle of belief that the church and society imposes on me.
I have so many questions for you, which I will save, and hopefully they will spark in my mind. Glad you're here, Toby. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl.
Yes, hi
Really
everyone.
glad you joined us.
Yeah, I'm Carl Preisler. I'm from Ireland, living now in Spain. I used to work as a IT director, retired now. I've got called to do trance work by spirit. So I work in trance with my guide, Katarang, and other spirit beings. And that's bringing through philosophy and guidance, but also facilitate trance healing sometimes for people, and soul release, so releasing trapped souls, either after traumatic events or sometimes when I visiting places where I know certain events have happened. I'm also a qualified clinical hypnotherapist and Reiki master. So a few different things, but I'm curious about everything, so I probably dabble in too many different things.
So fascinating. So do I understand it correctly in the way that when you are in a place that has experienced trauma, you energetically clear when you're working, you clear that place of the energetic trauma?
Well, I'm not sure if I do that. Maybe I try, but I connect in with my guides and go kind of semi into trance. And the way I kind of visualize it, I act as a light beacon then to attract any trapped souls that are still lingering in the area, so that they can be lifted up.
That's fascinating.
And I imagine that helps also clear the energy. And I used to find when I was in the UK, often like when I went sightseeing to old cathedrals and stuff, I'd be walking around and I'd be feeling different beings trying to like come inside. Well, not come inside, I suppose, like, you know, because when I was very open while I was training, you could sense when you were in those places that there were souls around that just wanted to kind of use you as a vessel, perhaps for release. I would imagine it was for release, or for kind of prayer, you know, if they were monks, maybe. But yeah, so things like that.
It's really interesting that we're always at the beginning. You know, wherever we are, we're always now, and it's always the beginning of the next part of our journey. Even though, you know, we've experienced so much, we're always now, and there's always, all time is with us in some regard. I hope you get my drift.
Yeah.
We're going to hear from Elizabeth, and Elizabeth's going to speak on the subject of forgiveness. Very powerful topic. Is that right, Elizabeth?
Yes, I do ancestral clearing, which is real similar to what Carl's talking about. And by the way, connected into Paul's work, because I clear for the witch wound. It's kind of one of the things that I do. And also I have a biology background, and I have to say, from like looking at animal behavior and evolution, sex is on a continuum. It's not this or that. It's this way in many animal species. So just making that comment. And then what you just said, Alexis, First Yoga Sutra, yoga is now. It's all happening now.
Right.
And then the other founding principle there in yoga is accept what is. That would be my practice. Accept what is. So part of the foundation of ancestral clearing is it's a modality that was pioneered by Howard Wills and is further developed and trademarked by John Newton of Health Beyond Belief. I'm one of his practitioners, and I've kind of taken his work and made it, put my own little spin on it. One of the 4 pillars of ancestral clearing is forgiveness, and by that we mean offering up that which no longer serves us. And who are we offering up to? Offering it up to a power greater than us, recognizing that there is a power greater than us. And I thought to do an ancestral clearing today, but for some reason, like I just felt like, let's do a self-forgiveness practice. And I just wanted to share with you a kind of like a download that came into me when I was doing some work about a year or 2 ago that's been coming up again with clients and friends. So I thought I'd share it with you today. Here we go.
Thank you.
Forgive yourself for all of it, no matter what. Forgive yourself for getting your wants and your needs confused. Forgive yourself for failing, for falling, and for not knowing how to get up again. Forgive yourself for feeling powerless and not knowing where to turn. Forgive yourself for losing your sense of connection and becoming lost in isolation. Forgive yourself and keep forgiving. Forgive yourself for not being present in relationship and for making mistaken decisions in finances and health. For not being reliable and misallocating your priorities. For overburdening others and for keeping secrets for them. For not being able to establish a boundary with others or yourself. For being overindulgent with your wants and pushing others to come to your aid, helping to get your needs met. Forgive yourself for times of righteousness, no matter the cost. For running on unconscious behaviors and actions that didn't serve you or anyone else. Forgive yourself and keep forgiving. Forgive yourself for being in the frequency of addiction, hiding from the world and yourself and getting lost in the darkness. Forgive yourself for time tripping straight out of the present and for losing yourself altogether. Forgive yourself for confusing your ego with your true self. Forgive yourself for confusing love for lust or codependency, for obsession, impulsive behavior, for looking away from yourself and not finding that which you so desperately sought. Forgive yourself for gripping and grasping whatever you could to tide you over until you could find a safe and healthy refuge. Forgive yourself for not knowing the answer, for denying how deep your despair, for doing all you could to numb, distract, and dissociate yourself from the truth. Forgive yourself and keep forgiving. Forgive yourself for not knowing how to live life without living it, for disappointment and letdown and the self-loathing that followed. Forgive yourself for not loving yourself and not receiving love in kind. Forgive yourself for not loving others, for any blaming or shaming. Simply forgive and keep forgiving. Forgive yourself for being asleep, losing your way, not understanding life, and being brought down by all of it. Forgive yourself for coiling into yourself and hanging on so tight you forgot which muscles were doing the holding. Forgive yourself for desperately holding on to whatever you could to help you through the night. Even after all this time, forgive yourself and keep on forgiving yourself. Offer up all your troubles, the shame and guilt to all of it, to the universe. Offer it all to the altar of love and watch it transmute you into a new awakening. Let the truth of love rain down on you as you forgive and keep forgiving, and let it flow through you, cleanse you, and purify you for once and for all.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you for listening.
I
It
want,
impresses upon us how much there is to forgive. The sort of litany went on, and you realize they're just layers and layers. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's really the ego and its fantasies that trap us in and burden us with all this conditioning that, you know, when we can learn to forgive and let go of the unnecessary, then we really come into being able to see our true self, right? So the idea is to unburden ourselves. Yeah.
I want to share with you that for 3 years, maybe more, I had a period of estrangement with my mother, and Elizabeth did some powerful healing prayers for the mother wound, and it healed the relationship with my mother. So I'm eternally grateful to you for that. Thank you so much. You've deeply touched my life. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexis. I'm so glad that was helpful. And I have to say, you came with an open heart, and we asked, you know, Source to come in and on your behalf. And you know, when we have an opening and we're willing and we ask the boss of all bosses, you know, magic happens.
And it did
So
happen.
I'm so glad. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's why I'm in the work. I love this work so much. Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind sharing your website with people that are watching, either on the recording or, you know, people that are here.
Oh, sure. Yes. So you can find me at my name, Elizabeth. I'm at Elizabeth-Kipp.com. You need to put a dash in between my first and last name. And you can book a session there. There's lots of free information, lots of ancestral clearing prayers, lots of stuff on handling stress. So thank you. Thank you so much. Are we doing something on near-death experiences today? Is somebody doing a thing on that today?
Well, I mentioned in the group chat that
Mhm.
Toby worked with a therapist. Do I have this right, Toby? That you worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross at one stage. Do I have that right?
Oh,
You're-
he's muted.
I took several, when I was in graduate school, I took several classes in death and dying, but I think you're remembering someone else rather than, because I didn't know Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Oh, you didn't know her? Okay, perhaps I got it wrong. I wanted to ask you your opinion on it later on, so please remind me if I don't mention it.
Well, I'm bound to have an opinion.
Okay, fair enough.
I just wanted to share, because you brought in the NDE thing. I've had 3 NDEs and they've all been so similar, and they've been profound. And I thought this would be a great, I don't want to be known for that. Like, I don't like, it's not part of my, put it on my shingle, but it's so profound. It would be fun to kind of share that in space.
Well, you know, I know that you have to go,
Yep.
you know, in some minutes or whatever. So why, if everybody's good with that, Paul, if you wouldn't mind speaking after Toby, and Carl after Toby, yeah, you're good with that. Then I would like to hear about the
As I mentioned in the chat, I'm not planning to do a trance session this evening. I just don't think my energy's up.
I missed it. I missed that. Okay, fair enough. Thank you. I would love to hear about it, Elizabeth, if you would like to share.
Sure. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I thought I would just share a little bit.
It's all good.
So 3 different experiences over about, I don't know, 15 years, maybe 20 years. And each time I had a very similar experience. First of all, I ended up in this space where I couldn't see anybody's faces, but I could tell bodies that were kind of indistinct, but I could still tell that's what they were. And there was a being that was in the front of a whole bunch of other group of people, and which I couldn't see any of their faces, but you know what? I recognized all of them. I recognized them in here. It was really interesting. So my eyes were, so that was kind of cool. And the other thing, there's three things that happened. The other one was I looked at this being each time in these 3 different times, and I said, and I don't even know, it just came out of me, I haven't completed my mission. And I came back each time. And it wasn't like there wasn't judgment on this being's part or a decision or anything else. There was just this conversation, and I came back. So I can't tell you any more than that. But here's the part that was so even mind-blowing for me, even today when I think about it. The love on that side of the veil was, I don't have any words for it. It was indescribable. And I remember coming back and thinking, my mission must be really important if I want to leave that. Right? Because I just haven't experienced love on that level anywhere on this planet. I mean, I've lots of loving people in my life, but not, that was a whole other realm of love that I just, it's hard to describe. So that's my experience, and it happened 3 times. So, as a scientist, kind of like, well, that's a pattern, and I don't know what to make of it other than that. But
Can I
but
ask,
I
were you unwell? Were you unwell at the time?
yeah, one time I was in surgery. Another time I was recovering from that, and another time I was actually I lost my heartbeat because I was under a lot of stress, and the doctors gave me kind of a cocktail of drugs. I don't do well on drugs, and I was gone. So
Wow.
that was interesting because the nurse came in, happened to walk into my room as soon as I was starting to fall when I passed out from all that medicine, and the heartbeat stopped. He was right there to pick me up and get me started again. It was like, yeah, I've had a few of those experiences in my life where,
You
I'm not here by accident. None of us are here by accident.
Right.
I'm just convinced of that. Even as a scientist, I still say that. Yeah.
You reminded me of this Instagram little story that I saw of this little boy talking about after death. And he's obviously a very wise old soul, and he was describing what happens where the consciousness goes into a portal. And I remember you speaking about the picture behind you being a portal last time we spoke. And this little boy was talking about consciousness goes into a portal on the top chakra, and then all of the people that ever loved us, all of our guides, are all there waiting for us. And it was just as you described. It just reminded me of that. Very interesting that you had it 3 times. Wow. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Elizabeth before we move on? Thank you very much for sharing. Oh, go ahead.
Do you think that the experiences just immediately changed how you were as a person? Is this transformative each time?
Yes. Well, the first time it certainly was. It was just like, I don't have a fear of death anymore. I did until I had that first experience. I've had some pretty stressful, very, very, very stressful physical challenges. And I think if I was, I'm not so afraid of that anymore as I used to be, but still, I think there's a part of me that's more afraid of the suffering that happens before we die than the actual death is just, next thing, like I'm off to the next thing, right? But it did change it shifted the fear of death. It shifted that. And then I've had some pretty epic level physical challenges in my life. So I don't have quite the level of freak out around physical stuff that I used to. But I am human, and my ego wants to keep me safe, and it's very interested in survival, so it asserts itself.
I
Thanks
just
for the
have one
question.
more question for you, Elizabeth, about your addiction recovery work. And I'd like to ask you, do you work with the individual and their consciousness through prayer? Is that how you do it?
Oh, well, I do offer a free ancestral clearing to anybody in recovery. I do a 50-minute session for free. Because we have so much burden, it's just nice to kind of start without that. The issue, Alexis, did you put your finger right on the center of it, is that trauma isn't what everything under addiction is trauma. It's unresolved trauma. So it's not the trauma, it's not the addiction, it's the pain that's underneath it, right?
Mhm.
So trauma is not what happens to us, it's what happens inside of us because of what happened to us, and it's because we're alone with the hurt. So that disconnection that we get in that's addiction is a disease of disconnection, right? So the journey that I have as a person in recovery and as a recovery coach is to help whoever I'm sitting in front of or the group that I'm with reestablish their awareness of their connection. Here's the thing: we're always connected. We just forget because of the ego and the burden, right, that we carry. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexis. Great to see everybody, and thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, let's just all take a breath for a moment. I was thinking about illness and how it's always a teacher. When we have something to recover from, or given an illness of something, there's always something to shift, isn't there? To clear within ourselves. Just a thought that occurred to me that I wanted to share. Toby, please, I would love to hear from you about your work, your journey, and your subject is synchronicity, among other things. Please tell us more.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me to come participate in this and meet y'all. Let me start by saying I had an interesting experience this week. I had lunch with a high school buddy of mine, Whitley Strieber.
I know.
Whitley got famous, as a novelist for The Wolf Inn and the movie The Hunger, but then he's also known around the world as sort of one of the contact of people who writes about the abduction experience, and so we went to lunch, and I've known about Whitley's experiences all my life. He's talked about this, but I was again impressed. He lives in a world in which the alien visitors come to him at night. He meditates with them. He has some that are friends and some who are not enemies, but competitors, and he understands the dynamics between the different kinds of aliens. Well, that's a universe that most of us are just not aware of or understand in a different way. Talking with him this week kind of impressed upon him. I'm fascinated, as I said earlier, with Buddhism and the mythology of the world soul and how we're all part of a larger being. That's my mythology, and I live in a world in which synchronicities happen, and enlightenment moments and realizations about how all this fits into that world. Whitley lives in a totally different universe in which the issues have to do with alien beings with big eyes. It's as I don't think these are in competition with each other, but I think earlier before we actually started recording, so I'm not recording, we didn't get this in there, but I talked for a few minutes about that idea of the four great vows that the Mahayana Buddhists take in participation with the spirituality of the Bodhisattva, taking upon themselves the suffering of the world out of goodness and the desire to save people, out of kindness. The fourth of these vows, I think, says, however incomparable the highest perspective, I vow to attain it. Our effort should be to reach higher and higher perspectives, so that things that seem inconsistent with one another or in conflict with one another somehow all are seen to fit together. Whatever mystery I experience with my Buddhism and my meditation and stuff, I see my friend Whitley gets with his experience of aliens. I think actually we're experiencing sort of the same thing. I don't know what Whitley's experience is, and I have no business, actually judging him. This is Toby Johnson's ego. I don't think there really are space people who are coming to Earth in flying saucers. I think that's what those phenomena are experiences of deep consciousness, in much the way that our religion is. And in the same way, most religious people end up believing in the symbols that they use. And I think our effort, the effort really is to keep rising higher and higher, so that you understand that your symbols are yours. They are the way that the universe is manifesting your hero journey to you. I mentioned Joseph Campbell as a major influence on me, so this idea of the hero journey is important. Curiously, one of the ideas that Campbell did not mention in that big book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, was what I got as my big idea, which I've called the myth of the great secret. And I would like to talk about that for just a minute. I think that there is a whole cycle or a theme that runs through the mythologies and the folklore and the stories of the gods and all that, and that ends up in our own personal lives as a kind of interpersonal question, ordeal that we go through, which is the sense that there is something in life that we need to know, but it's a secret, and we just can't quite grasp it. That's what you see in the stories of the heroes in one way or another, like the Arthurian legends. They're going out seeking the Grail. Well, the question, of course, is, well, what is the Grail? What would it be to achieve the vision of the Grail? What is that going to do to you? Elizabeth spoke about having the near-death experience and seeing the other side. So it's like there is this secret, and we're always trying to, or we should be trying to understand what this is telling us. And so it ends up, the religions have provided this great tradition of stories, like the story of Buddha seeking enlightenment. The story of Jesus trying to change the religion of the Hebrews to be more about love and less about taboo. The Blessed Virgin Mary as an expression of the feminine principle in our experience. These symbols come down to us. We mistake. We were at least trained when we were young to mistake them as real. You know, if you were Catholic, you were expected, you were required to actually believe this stuff, like the joke, of course, with the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Catholics are required to believe in the Immaculate Conception. Very few Catholics, very few people understand what the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception even means, and they mistake it for the virgin birth of Jesus. It's really something else. It's about the goddess as the great source of love and innocence in the universe. So, you know, I've been particularly interested in this because as a gay man, religion was sort of the enemy. And the trick is to see through it so that it isn't destructive. I can cope with having been raised as a Catholic and still get out of Catholicism, and at the same time honor all of those experiences, honor what I know. You know, part of being a Catholic is knowing all this arcane knowledge about what these various doctrines mean, and who the saints were and all those stories, you know. Hinduism is a similar religion. It's full of local stories and local gods. The Buddha's teaching is, remember that the gods all exist in the mind. They don't exist in space, they exist in you, because the universe exists in the mind. We become so scientific, you know, we end up just in the course of our lives believe things are real. And they are real. The physical world exists, but so does the mental world. And they can interact with each other so that you get odd phenomena like synchronicity. Synchronicity is one of those experiences where, you know, how is it that such strange coincidences can happen? You know, you're driving along in the car worrying about something, a car pulls up next to you and the song they're playing on the radio is the answer to what you're thinking about. How do those things happen? How do we get miraculous healings? I don't have an answer, and I'm saying actually that, you know, the answer is experiential as opposed to thoughtful. I liked how Elizabeth described, you know, the afterlife experience, the experience of that other world. I'm not sure it's after death. I'm not sure about that. Death in a way is an illusion, although for the physical body, death is real. Within our lives, though, we have the opportunity to experience this greater world and the greater consciousness. And I think that's what all this is about. The clue, we can understand our lives as full of clues to what we really are. And what we really are is God experiencing itself. Something like that. And, you know, I talked about Joseph Campbell. You know, there is a writer who about religion, comparative religion, named Jeffrey Kripal. Do any of you know Jeffrey Kripal? He's a professor at Rice University and writes wonderful books. He's a very heady writer, but they're quite entertaining. He's especially interested lately in comic books and how the comic book heroes are a way that these deep archetypal images that are part of the soul now are manifesting in the culture as video games and superheroes and stuff. One of the things Kripal talks about it, and it was the experience that I had with Campbell, that when you study comparative religions, if you study just the history of religions and learn that there are other religions and other ways of understanding all that spiritual reality, it sort of pushes you into what Kripal calls a neo-Gnosticism, a sort of an understanding. I know something now that the other people don't seem to know, which is that there are all these different truths. They can't all be true in the same way. Or maybe they are all true in the same way, which means the universe is much bigger and more complicated than we thought. Okay, how's that for talking a little bit?
I would like to just pick up on a couple of things that you said, if I may. It's really interesting that synchronicity is one of the things that you're talking about, and Whitley Strieber, who you mentioned as your friend who you met with, was my introduction to the whole alien subject, because I read his book and he kind of awakened me to the whole alien connection, which has been a theme throughout my life. And I've had multiple sightings throughout my life, some of which I've documented on photographs and video. I have many videos and photographs. And
have you seen the visitors themselves, or the saucers?
Yes, I have. Yes, many times. And I just wanted to pick up on the thing that you said about that you don't believe that there are aliens coming into the world, that it's a kind of like something that's happening in the mind. I don't disagree with you, but at the same time, I believe that that is true of everything in reality.
Yeah, yes.
Right, in the way that we are living in an illusion, to some degree, and the whole world is, and our world, our individual worlds, are manifestations of mind and of the psyche and psychic energy manifest. So I don't disagree with your observation. I just wanted to pick up on how
well, yes, and I don't, I want to be very careful when I say I said I don't believe the aliens really exist as aliens in flying saucers. Whitley's having the experience. What I believe doesn't matter, but it's my obligation to somehow include his experience as real in my experience of what I think is real. So that kind of pushes. The reason for people having religious experiences, mystical experiences, push open the categories. Oh yes, open the doors of perception.
Yes. I'm sure the others have questions for you. There is something that I would like to ask you before I open to the others for questions, and that is, I would just like you to speak about your book briefly. Just, I don't know if you could put it in a nutshell about your philosophy or idea of why we are here as gay men, and what you have gleaned as our mission, or the whole Native American, is it two feathers or two
spirits? Two spirits is one of the ideas.
Yeah, elaborate a little bit on that, please.
Okay. Well, one of the sort of the central things that's kind of obvious is that homosexuality, the fact that there are people who are homosexual, shows that sex is a bigger phenomenon in consciousness than simply the mechanics of reproduction. which is what it appears to be on the surface. There's more to it because there are people who relate to sexuality differently from having children. You know, in terms of practical time, right, historical time right now, it seems like the gay movement, this awareness of, well, the gay movement comes out of feminism and the kind of psychological sophistication that starts with Freud, is that human beings back at the end of the 1800s or so began thinking about thinking and questioning. Now, you know, the Hindus and the Buddhists have been doing this for 5,000 years, but over here, we're thinking about it now, you know, scientifically. And so you have Freud and Jung and this. I grew up in San Francisco in the 70s. You know, we all went to therapists and we were in encounter groups and Jungian dream groups, very much thinking about what it means to think. I think homosexuality is one of these things that doesn't fit in the, oh, you know, I wanted to make this comment about science and how we assess what is true. You know, if you do experiments in the laboratory, you take readings and then you figure out what curve fits, touches on all the dots. And that must be the scientific truth because that's what occurs over and over and over again. But then occasionally there's a dot that doesn't fit on the curve. And that's either experimental error or your model didn't fit. The model explains all this, but it doesn't explain these dots out here. So you've got to widen your model. And I think there's a way in which simply the existence of gay people as having a different experience of sexuality is pushing us psychologically to open this up. We certainly are seeing that with all this awareness of gender now. You know, this kind of went to a whole nother
So I was
thing.
with a woman for 13 years. My partner was married to a woman for 10 years. I have a little bit of an issue with the whole idea of being a gay man because I think that sexuality is such a spectrum. You know, I do consider myself a gay man, but I find that word so limiting in the way that you know, our sexuality is so broad and so vast, and it's and why do we have to define ourselves as anything, you know? But I'd really like you
Well, now let me argue the other side. I mean, you have a perfectly good point in there. Many people, yeah. But I would say that the reason for defining these things is to help us understand them. And let's go back to this, you know, psychology and therapy and all that. One of the efforts in psychotherapy was to understand the consequences of who you are, you know, and so in order to understand, if you are a gay man, you know, for me that has meant falling in love with other men, not being sexually aroused by women, coming out of the 1960s and 70s. 1970 San Francisco, well, that clearly means you're gay. And that's the way of understanding it. And in order to understand what it means to be gay, it's helpful, it's not required, but it's helpful to look at the history and look at what other gay men have thought, like Edward Carpenter, who saw the connection way back in the early 1900s, saw the connection between primitive shamanism and modern day homosexuality.
Can I ask you about the role of gay men in your writings, in your research? You know, what is our role on a spiritual, you know, perspective?
Well, partly it's to challenge the existing religion. That's what's happened. It's kind of created a political, social crisis. It is surprising that the churches, the churches are all breaking up over whether they should. I mean, doesn't that seem silly? I mean, what difference does it make? Well, why should the who is it? The Lutherans, pro-gay Lutherans and anti-gay Lutherans can't belong to the same church together. What kind of Christianity is that in which you
Christianity
can't get
itself is
along?
fractured, isn't it?
Is it? It's just fractured, all in the name of love.
Yeah.
All in the name of love. We hate each other and kill each other.
Guys, do you have thoughts, comments, questions? Like, I'm sure you do, right? What are you thinking? Go ahead.
Well, oh, you go first, Paul.
Oh, you can go first. It's fine. You spoke first.
Say what you said again.
I was going to say Carl spoke first, so he can go first.
Oh, okay.
as well.
Okay, I'll go. I don't know, there's just been such a long conversation. I wanted to comment on the fact of being brought up as a Christian and as a Catholic, actually, and how resolving that conflict when you come to terms with your sexuality, and all the aspects of what you're expected to adopt without question as a Catholic from the religious teaching. So I can kind of resonate with you there on lots of the experiences. And then I just kind of, I guess I found it a little bit curious why, Alexis, you feel that we have to have a specific spiritual role as gay men that defines a shared gay persona spiritual role.
That was me just
I know.
researching Toby's work.
Yeah, I know.
And me making those kind of arguments.
Yeah,
but I still think it's a kind of a weird question, because everybody as individuals have different roles, and we come into this inclination to act in different ways as sounding boards, as like, to play whatever role we are in this little drama that we call our family and our friends. And we take on whatever characteristics are going to be important for our development, their development. And that could be our sexuality. It could also be our mood and our temper. It could be, whether we're a violent person by nature and we're having to deal with repressing anger and stuff. But so I don't think there's a kind of a shared objective of like, well, there might be, but I just kind of thought it was a weird perspective. It's like, there has to be a reason for everything. There doesn't have to be a reason for everything. I think there's sometimes things just are, and we choose as spirits what we're going to feel comfortable with as our means of expressing our inner selves as we go through life. And I would imagine perhaps those of us who are incarnate as gay perhaps feel more that that's in tune with our non-specific spiritual essence, and there are others that feel more aligned to a masculine or a feminine expression of their energy. So, I just but it's interesting. It's always interesting to have these different conversations because you learn other people's thoughts and it makes you think a bit more deeply. But yeah, I don't know. That was it. So yes, that was it really. There's so much, I couldn't remember all the comments I wanted to make, but it's fascinating conversation.
It seems like gay men, I'm going to talk about gay men because that's what I know. And there's that we've widened this identity so big lately. But to talk about gay men, homosexual men, which is my experience, I set my introduction up and I stopped. I lost the direction I was going. It seems like many of us as young people were religious. I was a devout little Catholic boy.
Yeah, no, I wanted to become a priest as well. I thought about it for a while.
And it seems like that tells us something about the nature tells us something about the nature of homosexuality.
Yeah. Well, I know
that-
lots of
yeah.
Italians that weren't devout little Catholics. They were holy little brothers, and they were shagging everything at like 6 and 7. So,
But so now, to the extent that there are some of us who were religious as youth, it's nice for us to be able now to grow up and be religious as adults, but now with a much more mature religion.
yeah.
And our homosexuality then becomes the question, the obstacle that we have to overcome. We have to rethink what religion means. In order to stay religious, you've got to change what religion is, not
Yes.
change what you are.
Well, yes, and I do that by categorizing religion as the doctrines of a man-made organization, whereas spirituality is, your connection with spirit and with the divine. So I prefer to think in terms of spirituality rather than religion.
Yeah.
And like you, so that means sometimes I might chant some Buddhist mantras, sometimes I might chant some Christian prayers. Sometimes I might chant some Hindu mantras. So,
Exactly. Neo-Gnosticism.
yeah. So if people ask me, I put down multi-faith on my read.
Oh,
Oh, I like that. I might adopt that.
yes. Ask your religion. All of the above.
Yes. Paul, there was something that you were going to say.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like Carl, I had like about 50 points that I wanted to make, and only one of them loosely has remained. I want to go back to what you said about the role of gay men is, and it almost sounded like we're the antagonist almost to the church. And I was thinking about this. Like, obviously, I grew up religious, but at the age of 10, I rejected my Christian faith because I thought it was a bunch of crap. And there's a whole story behind that. But and obviously now I'm a pagan. And I was thinking, when you were saying that, I was thinking when I'm making love to my partner, the last thing in the world I'm thinking about is how I'm sticking 2 fingers up to the church, like,
Oh,
you know. So I don't really think about like my being, my existence as being like, again, like I don't consider myself the antagonist to the church. And maybe that's because I'm a pagan, like Christianity doesn't really enter, or I'll say Abrahamic faiths don't enter into my reality or my worldview unless, I mean, I just literally just had it. I just had someone make a weird crucifix at my window. Being a pagan, obviously devil worshipper, la 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 la. But unless that comes into it, like I don't really have a lot to do with that. And I was wanting to know, I was a bit long-winded. I wanted you to kind of expand on what you were kind of saying. Do you see gay men as the antagonist to the Abrahamic faith, or
well,
kind
yes,
of
in a
think I have a
way,
bit more of a
it's
purpose than again just sticking 2 fingers up to the church and going na 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 na,
well, more important is what we do in our own personal lives and how, if we can understand what these myths mean, tells us that when you're making love with your partner, this is God making love with you. Your partner, our love, is how we experience what the church calls God. That adds to the sexual romantic experience. If those symbols mean something to you, if they don't mean anything to you, well, then you don't need them. But it's a shame I think it's a shame for some people, for some gay people, gay men who had been religious as youth to then end up feeling rejected and guilty, and they throw out religion and end up being angry. I'm not sure that these people exist, but I don't know. That's one of we hear that kind of
Just ask you a question there, like with that thing that you mentioned about if you're having sex with your partner. What if you have an abusive partner and your partner is like beating you or something? Does that mean that your relationship with God is abusive?
Oh, well, I think maybe you've got the wrong God. If that's where your sexuality takes you. I don't know. I mean, yeah, yes, we have to recognize there are people whose relationships are just awful and that are abusive and traumatizing, and that's part of coping somehow. You know, we were earlier talking about non-resistance, just letting what is real be real. I think that there are a group of gay men who have spiritual experiences, and my writing, you know, like the people who identify as radical fairies, that's an especially good group. And you know, the body electric work, Joseph Kramer's penis massage exercises that result in waking up and opening the eye and seeing God. You know, those are.
Is this related to tantric work?
Well, sort of. Do you know what the body electric is? Have you all heard of this?
I've heard the phrase, and I've heard that it's a book, right?
Well, a former Jesuit named Joseph Kramer was a massage therapist in Oakland, California, outside San Francisco. And early in days of AIDS, as people were having to kind of avoid, you know, fucking, he came up with exercises to do erotic massage. And that has evolved over time into these weekend trainings, which are a training in re-educating yourself on how to experience sexual arousal. And the example he uses, most people experience sex as blowing up a balloon, and you blow and blow and blow and put out as much pressure till you finally pop. And he offers an alternative experience, which is to, instead of popping the balloon, imagine rubbing it with the cat fur, you know, so that you build up an electric charge, and you build up more and more charge, and the charge keeps getting higher and higher. And then in the actual work of the experience in the trainings, they do a thing where there are several, you get massaged by several people at once, and always one person is working your cock so that you're staying sexually aroused, but you are breathing what's called circular breathing, which causes you to hyperventilate. So you can't mount an orgasm if you're hyperventilated. So you just keep getting deeper, higher erotic states, is what they call it. And then it culminates in you squeeze up and then release and throw your arms and legs out. And most people have a profound mystical-like experience, which is both highly sexual, non-orgasmic, but it's like the orgasm happens at the level of soul. It's a very powerful experience and wonderful, you know. And that's something that gay men, you know, the Christians are not teaching this. Nobody's.
I want to check something with you. Did you make your point, or did you get your? I felt like there was more that you wanted to say.
To me, or
you?
No, yeah, no, yeah, it does definitely. I was just curious, but actually now I have a kind of a like a follow up. If that's okay, can I follow up or no?
Yeah.
Do I get one question?
Do it.
I'm just intrigued because obviously we at the beginning of the year, didn't we, or whenever it was, we did that whole sex kind of episode.
Yes.
And obviously tantric kind of came up, and obviously Toby, you're talking about it is Toby, isn't it?
Right? Yes.
You're talking about like the sort of the sexual and the mystical, the almost tantric. It's interesting. So we've just had Beltane, and obviously part of Beltane or Beltana is obviously it's a fertility thing. It's not just about people with ribbons running around a balance-like shape. Obviously, for those of us who practice, you know, certain kind of pagan practices, like for me, it's an opportunity to invoke the god. For me, it's Canonus, to engage in kind of mystical, ritualistic sex. So it's interesting, like you're talking about how part of this, us having sex in a way, and obviously it's very tantric as well, isn't it? The idea that sex is not just a procreative experience, but it's one of reunification. And it's interesting, 'cause I used to say that yes, sex is for procreation, but it ain't about making babies. It's literally two words combined: proactively create. And if you think about, like, as you're going through that, through the motions, you can either be completely focused, and there are lots of gay men who I imagine who are like this, like there are lots of straight people like this, that, you know, are completely focused on the physical pleasure and, like, you know, the ongoing ecstatic climax moment. And there are those of us who obviously use it to, and they're creating something there, they're creating a feeling in the body. But for those of us with a more mystical or spiritual inclination, there's a process where obviously we're using this moment to connect deeply with our partner, and obviously become the two halves of the whole, to, you know, to reunify with whatever deity or concept of a supreme being, if you have one, that you have, whether that's consciousness, whether you call that God or goddess, or, you know, whatever. I know I had a point in that, or a question. Kind of went on a ramble.
Well, bravo for the ramble. What you said is really good.
Yeah,
You're saying it, aren't you? That's it.
Oh, that's it. I was saying about procreation. Yeah. So in that moment, the procreation is the proactive creation of a unified sense of self, of bliss, of an ecstatic. And if we get obviously deep enough into it, because obviously when we do the beltane ritual, there's almost a moment of ecstatic trance. Well, I've channeled or invoked a deity into me. It becomes quite wild. There's a very wild, passionate element to that. But obviously there's a completely altered sense of self and space and concept of who we are. There's a disillusion of the self, the ego, all of that good groovy stuff. And I think if you go back to that comment, there I'm going now, about being the antagonistic, or the villain basically to the church, in many ways, we're not really that, but we're the protagonist to existing in an altered state of consciousness, right? Where our sex isn't just about, you know, knocking some bird up and having some babies and creating a bunch of sproglets, but something more sublime. So maybe that's part of why we're here. And if you go back to the ages, some of the greatest ages and druids and priests and priestesses were either gay or lesbian. That I find,
yeah.
you know.
You know, one of the things that I've said, just sort of half jokingly, but you know, it seems like when you look at the history of religions and priests, the priesthood and monasticism and all that, religion has been made up by homosexuals. And it's gone crazy. And so it's our responsibility today to do something about what we unleashed on the human race.
Time is an issue, and I want to make sure that both Paul and Anna get to speak. I know that you said, Carl, that you would rather not do channeling today. If you would like to speak, please let me know. No? Okay. Well,
I'm
Toby,
just happy to join in the conversation. So.
Okay, I'm glad. I want to also acknowledge and welcome Anna, that came in during that conversation. Hi, Anna. Good to see you. I'm going to just say thank you, Toby. You brought a lot of interesting information up this evening, and it's just raised a whole load of questions that I want to talk more with you about. So please come back.
Yes.
We're not done, right? There's so much more. So I'm going to just ask you to hold on to the rest of it till next time, and to allow Paul to speak, because you're going to talk about the Rowan tree, right?
Oh,
I am.
Toby, thank you.
thank you.
So, hello everyone. You right there? So the Rowan tree. So it's interesting. So obviously the theme was about synchronicity, and I'm thinking, what could I talk about? And obviously there's lots. I probably could have picked about 6 or 7 other different things that I could have contributed to around the concept of synchronicity. But something that's really interesting for me is that whatever it is that we talk about, whether it's our spiritual awareness, our moments of gnosis, our moments of ecstatic awareness, using whatever, whether it's like for me, witchcraft, or us other people using manifesting and law of attraction, people always kind of approach these things with such an open sense of self, but without two things that I think are necessary for whatever the spiritual experience is. One of those is vision or awareness, the greater sense of something, whether you use tarot or other forms of divination, and something around protection. And I'm thinking about this concept of synchronicity, like we talk about getting into this flow of moments that connect to each other. And obviously, I'm trained in Jungian psychology as well. I'm thinking about, and I was first introduced to the concept of synchronicity, weirdly enough, with that. I completely skipped it in the Celestine prophecy. It didn't sit in my head for some reason, but it came to me through Jungian psychology. And it's the idea of meaningful moments being connected together that seem to have no causal connection. And obviously we understand really from a spiritual perspective that the causal connection between these things is the peak flow and state that we're in, right? How do we get there? So this is where the Rowan bit comes into this. So a couple of background bits about the Rowan. So the Rowan obviously is one of the original 20 sacred Celtic trees. Actually, weirdly enough, in both Scandinavian and Irish mythology, it also gave birth to the first woman, which is interesting. And it's deeply connected with the concept of the Arwen, which is inspiration. So it's power, knowledge, and love. And also, its name, it's been named the Eye of Delight. The berries are known as the Eye of Delight, and that very much connects it to its visioning aspect. So for me, in order to enter the flow of synchronicity, it requires a couple of things. It requires us to be open and aware. So you could burn rowan berries, which I have right next to me, rowan berries. They're also considered the blood of the gods as well, which is quite interesting. And thinking about like connection to source or deities, whatever those terminologies, Godhead you might use. There's also, when we talk about synchronicity, there's always this aspect of higher connection and consciousness, Godhead, unity, source energy, whatever concept you might use. Obviously, I use a different set of terminologies, I think, in terms of gods and goddesses, as opposed to source. And rowan berries, when you burn and you inhale the fragrance, they open up the senses to the other world, to the mystical realms. Again, Toby was talking about aliens. When he was talking about aliens, I was thinking about the Fae as these kind of otherworldly beings. Obviously, those are expressions of consciousness that we consider mystical beings. Could be any one of those things, could be aspects of consciousness. They could be different worldly beings. So the rowan berry, it helps open us up to vision. And how does that help us with synchronicity? Well, for me, it's not just about seemingly seeing random occurrences through time and space and then trying to somehow knit them together and go, oh yeah, that's connected and that's because I had this and that happened. What about if we actually directly awoken the ability to synchronize experiences? And the first part of that for me is literally to open up the doorways to vision. So burning rowan berries, and obviously there's a whole wide range of psychotropic and hallucinogenic herbs that you could burn to do this. But for me, because the rowan berry connects us to the other world, it connects us beyond the physical realm. In doing so, what we do is we get into that flow because we see the next step to take. And then obviously once we know what step to take next, guess what? The next step just goes, here you go. This is where you need to go next. And then obviously you keep walking that path. This instantly connects us into the flow of synchronicity. You're then led, guided along that path. And that's great. But also we want to protect that flow, because how easily it can be to sink back into the ego illusion, physical realm, again, the materialistic perception of self, how easy it can be to sink back into that without some method to protect us. So again, like all things, whether you're doing manifesting, you're trying to gain more prosperity, it's great to use methods to gain prosperity, but you must also protect your sources of prosperity. In this same way, in order to step onto the flow of synchronicity, you have to awaken to it, but you have to protect that flow. You have to find a method, some way to ensure that you continue, or else you get this really lovely synchronistic effect. Someone mentioned earlier, you're driving along the car and you're thinking, and all of a sudden you're quite depressed, and a song becomes the answer to your prayer. That's really great. And then if you continue to be open and awake to that, then you continue to follow. But obviously, what happens when you get knocked off that path? Rowan, once again, is a great tree for clearing, for protection, for ensuring that we continue upon this visionary state of experiences that keeps us connected to the flow. And once again, it's the berry that we can use. We can burn. We can use it to purify ourselves. You can make and if I had more time, I'd actually make a charm. Show you how to make a charm from this to help protect you from losing your spiritual way. Right? Again, if you go back to the idea that this is considered the blood of the gods, and gods being the way showers within Celtic and pagan kind of theology and belief, they show us the way. They guide us along our path. Then it's literally the life force, the blood, that keeps us in that flow. However, I will tell you very, very quickly, you take 2 blackthorn thorns, tie them together with red thread, take a whole load of these berries, with red thread and needle. You string all of them together, and then you tie them to the end, and what you end up with is like a solar cross made from blackthorn thorns and rowan berries, and it's a great way to protect you on your spiritual journeys. I think that's pretty much what I had to say. Oh, yes, there's actually also weirdly a connection between rowan berries and Bridget and her 3 primary principalities, which is healing, smithing, and poetry. Again, it connects to the Arwen, which I talked about just now, about being inspiration. We think about being in an inspired state. You open the doors to synchronicity. Synchronicity brings healing. Smithing, you might see as creation. In actual fact, it's not so much metalwork, but alchemy, and obviously poetry, which are other domain. That's about the types of words that we speak when we're in that synchronistic, ecstatic state. We have a tendency to speak much more fluently magical words, and through our words, we create the next steps. That was about a 90-minute lecture that I boiled down into 10 minutes. There you go.
Eloquently spiritual. I love your witchy poo ways.
Thank you.
So you reminded me of something. I see you have something to say. I'll give you the opportunity in a second. You reminded me, I'm learning about 24 songs right now for a blues project that I'm doing. And one of them is Mojo Working. They're old, and I wanted to know what a mojo hand was, because I looked, there's one lyric and they talk about a mojo hand, and it's from the African slaves that were not voodoo but hoodoo, and they would have something very similar to what you were talking about, where it was like a little pouch with magic and herbs or berries, and it would be like an incantation or a spell for protection. Exactly. It's worn on the physical body, and it's called a mojo hand from hoodoo, and it was to guard against sort of sexual abuse that was happening, during slave times and stuff like that. So I found that out through singing one of these songs, and it reminded me of the mojo hand when you were talking about the rowan berry, and also there was an association that I was looking into about rowan berries of the goddess, and it makes sense with what you said about Bridget.
Yeah.
So thank you for all of that. It was really interesting.
Interestingly enough, you're saying about that. throughout the early kind of music of Black origin, so jazz and blues, there were literally dozens, hundreds of dozens of mystical and magical kind of associations. Obviously the most famous being Nina Simone, I Put a Spell on You. There's loads, and and obviously Mojo Man as well. That's quite a famous one. And obviously the one that what I showed you is the British equivalent, which is what we call a charm bag. But yeah, no, it's fascinating how much kind of blues and jazz and soul have these really incredible, like right out in the open. Like there you go. There's all these kind of hoodoo and
In plain
voodoo kind
sight.
of yeah, exactly. Right out in plain sight. I love
Yeah.
it. I love
Toby,
it.
you had a comment or a question? If you could unmute.
I was going to ask if the berries are considered edible.
Yes, you could eat the berries. These are dried.
High in vitamin C.
But you could easily. I mean, I sell these in one of my many tea blends that I make. But yeah, the berries are edible berries.
And they're not psychedelics. So
No.
the spiritual experience is an addition to what the chemical of the berry is.
Yeah, they're not psychedelic in the same sense as like someone like mugwort or wormwood or blue lotus flower. It's more the mystical component when they're burnt opens up the kind of the vision state.
Thank you, Paul. Lovely.
Thank you.
Appreciate your question as well, Toby. Thank you.
Very much.
Anna, good to see you. How are you? Have you moved again? And are you wearing Larimar?
I'm wearing Larimar. I am once again adrift without a home once again. Yep. So this has been interesting. It's been an interesting 10 days or so.
Are you okay?
Yes.
Good.
I mean, talking about synchronicities and flow.
Yeah.
I am doing my very best. But yeah, I very unexpectedly suddenly don't have a home once again, and I'm done with Spain. I'm leaving.
Are you?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm done. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That's
cut the
huge.
cords.
That
And I'm
is-
going to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico.
You are?
Yeah, I don't know how.
I know it's been calling you for a while, right?
I don't know how, but I'm gonna go. And so, yeah, I mean, do you want me to talk for a bit?
Please, yeah. The floor is yours.
All right. So, I know everybody else knows me. Toby, you don't really know me. I'm
Please introduce yourself.
yeah, Carl knows me. We were just on the phone today. And Paul knows me well. So I'm a shamanic healer and a feng shui practitioner. And I also run the Lightworkers Collective, which is a group for healers and sensitives and so on and so forth. And I had like the most amazing shifts during the eclipse season. And I'm like, like sometimes when you've reached a certain point and you need to move to the next level of your life. And I felt for some time that it was coming on gradually, but it was time to leave Spain because I've been here for 10 years almost. And so I was living at the home of this woman, and she asked me to leave for a week while her daughter visited. And so I rented a place, and then right before I was supposed to come back, she told me not to come back. And which is, ridiculous. So, but what's happened is really interesting because I always choose things according to my intuition, right? And to flow. And so I chose through booking.com this studio because I felt the energy of the owner. And I felt like it was a really, like it just felt right, and it was available and everything. So as soon as I found that out, I messaged him and I asked if I could stay a little longer, and I explained what was going on. He was horrified, and has been kind of like my earth angel, because so I chose this place specifically because of the energy. And then I had to change. I was in another place, and then I was in this place that I'm in now. And then this place was rented because it was a holiday, and I had to go to a hotel for a night. He drove me to the hotel. Turns out he lived a block away. And then from the hotel, I booked an Airbnb that was literally around the corner from the hotel. And then this place opened up again for a few nights. He came and picked me up. I sat by the pool in the sun while they cleaned the house, and I'm sitting there looking at the mountain. So I've been to the beach, I've been to the mountain, I've been chauffeured around. I've I've had everything cleaned for me. So it's like I'm in this kind of awful situation. I'm not going to lie. This is really awful, and it's stressful, and it's upsetting, and whatever. But at the same time, I feel so taken care of, and I'm feeling very taken care of by the masculine. This is very much about polarity for me. And because I've been living in the homes of women here in Spain, and I'm just, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. For the Airbnb, I was in the home of a woman, lovely woman, but I was just like, no, I either want to be on my own or be in masculine energy, because I love men. I just, you guys, gay, straight, I just love men. And does he have a beard? No, no. No. Well, there is a guy upstairs who does, though. So I've just been feeling like it's time to go, and I know I will. I don't know how. I'm leaving next week. I have no idea. The money that even though this has cost me like double, triple what I normally, like everything's just been kind of coming to me bit by bit. Today I got a little payment for something. So it's like I'm in this flow. I've sort of surrendered. I'm very much in my feminine energy of being very yin and just like, okay, and going within. I went to the mountain twice to connect with that, and was this very powerful mountain here, amazing. And I just felt so embraced and so loved. So, I think when the stability is an illusion, people crave it and stuff, but the stability is within, the centeredness is within. And I know that part of why my life has had so much instability is so that I could help people navigate through unstable times, because they're inevitable. And so if I can navigate this with grace and relative ease, I want to inspire people that when you stay in your center and you go within, then those synchronicities happen and the things you need come to you. And I feel very, very blessed. So Carl thinks I'm going to France next week. I don't know. I'm going somewhere. I don't.
You're giving me a memory of how this session started.
I missed that, unfortunately.
Oh, you're giving me a memory of how this session started, where I started talking about the law of non-resistance. And it's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I'm surrendering, because what else am I, and there was like a day last week where It was a holiday, so the money I was waiting for wasn't in my account. There was nothing I could do. There's absolutely nothing I could do about it. So I just surrendered. I'm like, okay. And said yes to the things that came to me that felt right.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's exhausting.
Of course.
Yeah. But it's what I'm going towards is stability, because the next phase of my life is to build stability. It has eluded me in Spain, and that's, I mean, I just have to leave. Yeah.
Keep me posted, please, when you have
Uh,
time.
Yeah, I will. So, any
Remarkable.
questions?
Remarkable. Does anybody have anything that they would like to add before we close this session?
Well, perhaps it's none of my business, but you said things are very rough. What is it that's going on that's driving you out of Spain?
Well, I don't have a home.
And why is that? Just the B&B ran out?
Oh, it's complicated. It's like, yeah, I don't want to go into the whole thing. But yeah, you know, when you don't have, I don't have a family, I don't have a home, you know, it's, you know, I've been living in a state of flow for the last few years, very nomadically. And, but there's this pattern of having the rug pulled out from underneath me, and it's always has to do with women. Yeah, I thought I had cleared it last year, but apparently not. Last time, it's time for me to leave Spain. It's time for me to
So
leave
before
Spain.
this session closes, I would like to these are the two questions that I was going to ask Kataran, but I'm just going to speak them out loud and hope that the answer is sort of within the question as it's being asked. And it's about synchronicity, just following on from what you said, Anna. And I wish you every success in your surrender, knowing that you are divinely guided and taken care of at all times. And thank you for having the courage and the bravery to speak your truth and for standing in the face of adversity.
Yeah.
So
luxurious adversity.
Beautiful. I'm so glad that you're being taken care of by the masculine. And these were my questions. Is synchronicity orchestrated by higher forces? And is synchronicity a kind of marker for spiritual alignment? I don't expect an answer. I just want to sit with that question. And the second part of the question was, how would you describe synchronicity from your perspective? And that was to Kataran.
Oh, I see.
Right. So perhaps we could ask that question at another time.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think synchronicity is a sign of being in alignment with flow and with the divine. When you, like in your question, orchestrated by higher power, I wouldn't say orchestrated, because that means kind of lining things up. But in the same way, it's part of the plan. You know,
Yeah.
I think there's in all of our lives, if we're in the flow, things should come as we need it. And it's just the nature of being in the flow and connected to, it's like the law of attraction that people go on about all the time.
Yeah.
That just kind of maximizes the amount of synchronicity in regard to getting like the stuff coming to you, what you're wanting.
Absolutely. You have to be in there.
Yeah, I think orchestrated isn't the right word, but it is just the nature of the universe that if we are in flow and in connection, then more often than not, things will happen that we perceive synchronistically, but really it's just a product of being in the flow.
Yeah, well said, thank you. So let's close this session with two things, a word of gratitude and a power word. I'll start and we'll go around the group. My word is alignment. And I'm grateful for flow. And I'm going to ask Toby for your word and your gratitude.
Okay. Oh, well, my word would be perspective. And I'm grateful for the opportunity the universe has given me to remind my gay brothers about the perspective that we potentially hold on life, and that we have something to offer.
Thank you, Toby. Paul.
My power word, I think, I'm drawn, but I'm torn. Oh, hang on. Between, it's going to sound really strange, between abracadabra, because it's like the most magical word there is, and as I'm just talking in my little talk about the Arwen, which is wisdom, power, and knowledge. I don't know both. Probably, I'm going to be greedy. And what am I grateful for? I'm sat here and I'm grateful for this space. And I'm grateful most of all, and I really wish I could have captured it because every time I went to turn my camera around, it moved. But outside the front door of my shop, there was a magpie and a crow dancing with each other.
Wow.
And it's
Wow.
something magical about this space anyway. But there's always crows flying around this shop. They quite often just come and sit right outside the door. But literally, just now there was a magpie and a crow dancing with each other.
Wow.
And interestingly, when we talk about synchronicity, the magpie represents joy, and the crow is very much that mystical connection to the other world, to prophecy. I would consider that a synchronistic sign. So yeah, there you go. So I'm grateful for. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Oh, and I must say, when you were smoking, you were really giving an Edwardian vibe. There was something very Edwardian about you. Thank
I
you.
love it.
Anna.
So what is it? A power word and what I'm grateful for?
Yeah.
Um, hmm. Well, I'm grateful to have this space right now. And to my guides and to myself. I'm grateful to myself, for myself. And my power word is surrender.
Beautiful. You are powerful. You are loved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Carl.
So yes, sometimes they don't always come so easy, but I think my power word I'm going to choose today is flow. And I'm grateful for community.
Beautiful.
This community and community, all the different types of communities that we are often lucky enough to find ourselves involved in and blessed with, because yes, without community, we wouldn't get very far sometimes.
Yes, you're always all teaching me of the value of community every time. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate you all, and have a beautiful rest of your day or evening, wherever you are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing, and I look forward to seeing you again. Love you all.
Yeah.
Take care. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.